Today we are going to talk about quotations. Quotations are things that people say. It helps to make your stories or your reading more interesting by finding out what people are saying about different things. It gives you details and more examples and just makes it something that people want to know about. Here are some examples of quotations. My sister said, "Uh-oh." What did she say? Uh-oh were the words that came out of her mouth. That was the quotation. Or my family said, "Happy New Year." Happy New Year was the part that they were talking about. Or Nelly said, "This is boring." Again, "this is boring" is the quotation. It's the part that I hear her saying or the part that comes out of her mouth. Now, you can figure out a couple of the rules for punctuating quotations. That means making sure they have all the right parts so that it makes it easy for people to read them. Let me show you a couple of those rules. First of all, make sure you put those quotation marks around what the person is saying, just the part that comes out of their mouths. You want to put a comma between what they say out loud and the person phrase or the tag phrase. That's like the she said, or John said, or Mr. Smith said. That's the person or the tag phrase. Put a capital letter to begin what the person says and start a new paragraph whenever the next person talks. It makes it easier to follow along in a story or in a book so you know whenever a different person is talking. Let's go back to my original part or page in order to see some of those parts punctuated correctly. Let me go here. And I'm going to have to move this down a little bit. All right. So when I am talking, like I said, the part that comes out of your mouth, uh-oh, in this case, has to have the quotation marks around it. Then I'm going to use my comma to separate the part that came out of their mouths and the part that they said, or the part that says who said it. Then I'm going to make sure that I start the part they said with a capital letter. Let me take a look at my next example. So again, quotes around what they said, what came out of their mouths, in this case, Happy New Year. Comma in between the said phrase or the tag phrase and what they actually said. And then a capital to start the part that came out of their mouths. Let me try it one more time. Quotation marks, comma to separate, capital to begin. Now there's one other part that's going to make your writing more interesting, and that part is to make sure that you have interesting verbs instead of boring verbs. So, for example, instead of my sister said, which is kind of a boring word to use, I could say my sister shouted, uh-oh. My sister screamed, uh-oh. Or my sister repeated, uh-oh. Each of those is more interesting. Again, instead of my family said, maybe they yelled it. Maybe they shouted or screamed it. And again, if someone said this is boring, they might be screaming that, or they might be moaning like, this is boring. Or they may be complaining about it. So I could say Nelly's complained, this is boring. When you use vivid verbs like that, it's another way to make your story more interesting. Let's try it. I have 3 sentences here on the screen. I'd love for you to pause the video, think about how you would add quotation marks, commas, and capital letters to make these sentences correct. Pause the video now and give that a try. Now we're going to be taking a look at what you did and figuring out the correct way to do it. Let me just grab some tools here. So it's been such a long day, Michelle told me. What did she actually say? Well, she said, it's been such a long day. Now I have to separate that between what she said and the phrase that's the said part with her name. I also have to make sure that the beginning of the sentence or beginning of the quote has a capital, which it already does. It's been such a long day, Michelle told me. Here's the next one. Come clean your room, my mom told me. Again, quotes around what actually came out of her mouth. Come clean your room. Comma to separate. And a capital to begin the quote, which it already does have that. Last one. I'm going to get your papers, explained Mrs. Smith. I'm going to get your papers. That's the quote. Comma in between. There's already a capital there.